The world doesn't know its own business. The world is unqualified to run the world's business. The least capable people of educating other people are the educators. The people less able to properly and sensibly govern the people are the officials of the government. They are the least capable. The last person to be able to tell you how to reach a new life, how to rise above this world, the last people are the religious people. Hopeless situation? Yes, for most people. Of course, it's an absolutely hopeless situation, and it has been for thousands and thousands of years. Well, when I say hopeless, do not most people come into this world with a hopeless spirit after opening their eyes and looking around? And do they not proceed through life with a dark, confused, hurt, desperate state of mind? Of course, it's hopeless. Now, a hopeless individual is 100% responsible for his condition. There is never any excuse for you or for anyone else to say, I'm hopeless because that man sat in the chair and he said that the educators and the religious people and the governors, that they are misleading me. Therefore, I have a right to be hopeless. And if you say that in your sickness, if you say that, you will always must add to it, if they would only let me. This is a sure sign of insanity, that you think you can do better than the hopeless people running the world's affairs. Everyone lives like this. Everyone talks like this. People who say there's no point voting at all because they're all scoundrels. There's no point going to church because they're all hypocrites. That is a true statement, but it's no excuse for you. No human being who comes to this world ever has any excuse whatever for remaining as he is. But all of them do. Practically everyone uses the hopelessness of the situation to justify their own misery. How's that for stupidity? There was a scientist who was assigned to work on a secret project. And so he got an address of where it was and drove his car from the middle of the city way out to the suburbs. And he looked at the address given to him and he followed the road down. And he saw a big building there and he stopped and had a big high wall around it. So he said, this is the place. So he stopped his car and he walked up to the gate, which was closed. And his first impression was this was a very tightly secure place. Security was very strict, high wall, closed gate, a little opening in the door. So he went up and pushed a button and the little door in the gate opened. And a voice asked who it was, and he identified himself as a certain scientist who was supposed to come in and begin work on a very important secret project. So the voice said, fine, may we have your identity card, please? So he said, fine. He gave his identity card. The voice said, will you fill out this page of answers to our questions, please? And he said, boy, they are strict. So he sat down in his car and filled out the answers to their 20 or 30 questions, handed it back. And the voice said, we can't let you in today. Please come back tomorrow after we've examined your answers and run the security check on you. Well, he understood that. Being a secret project, they want to make any mistakes of letting the enemy in. So he went on home, came back the next day, and the whole process started all over again. Asked for his identification, asked him a lot of questions, stalled back and forth, made him wait out there for a long time. This went on for several days, and he began to get annoyed at it. Finally, about the end of the fourth day, he came back, went through the whole routine again, exactly the same procedure, answering questions, put down yes or no, describe your past employment and all, the whole thing. Very annoying. At the end of the fourth day, in the late afternoon, he heard a strange giggle coming from behind the door. And the door opened, and he went on in, and there was a man in a Batman uniform holding a toy balloon. And he looked around the grounds, and he saw a woman dressed up as a fairy. He saw another man in another odd costume, and he suddenly realized where he was. He was in a lunatic asylum. Someone had given him the wrong address. Now look, by the way, someone has given you the wrong address. Now look, once he saw clearly where he was, did he have any more problem? No. He knew he was at the wrong place, and he moved on to the right address and got on in and went about his work. He had no problem as long as he could see clearly where he was. He had a difficulty. Look, you have a difficulty only as long as you think that the lunatic asylum is the right address, the right place. Look at all the questions society throws at you. Who are you not to belong to our religion? Fill out the blank and tell us why. Who are you to say that you know better how to govern the government than we do? We know better than you do. See another law? Once you understand that you're knocking on the wrong door, once you see that it is wrong, you automatically, without effort, proceed to the right. Now, look what a simple fact that is, and how millions of people evade it. Why do we hammer over and over again? See clearly, see without any question that all you are is a mass of wrongness. Go through that stage, and effortlessly the right will come to you. Look at the resentment and the strain and even hatred that scientist had inside of him, because look, he was saying, look, I'm a great scientist, you ought to let me in there to go about my work. Instead, you're treating me as if I know nothing at all. This is the way we talk, isn't it? Look, I tell you, if you understand that you live in a lunatic asylum called this earth, called this world, if you see that, there is no problem at all. You are, well, you don't go, you are carried to the right place. How would you like to stop filling out the blanks, the blank pages, the long questionnaires? You know how you resent questions that people ask you about your personal life? Add the no to that. The no shirts will help you on that, incidentally. Do you ever have experience where people pry into your private life, ask you why you do this or why you don't do that? And you know what your problem is? You don't realize that person is a lunatic. We pry here in a different way, by the way, so don't you ever make a wrong connection. I know that some of you, when I said that, and I know one person particularly, or two people, who made a wrong connection when I said that. So what are you going to do about it? If you were to rebel, rightly rebel, against the imposition, you know what an imposition is? An imposition is something that someone has poured on you, a weight that someone has put onto you. If you would rebel against the imposition and say no to that, you would hear the giggle much sooner. And the gate would open much sooner so you could see where you are. And need I add that the lunatic asylum is inside as well as outside. Look at the answers you give yourself. Picture yourself at home one day, relaxed, and there's a knock on the door. You go to the door and a man is standing there. Follow this. He says, do you mind if I come in and wreck your furniture? And you think, this must be a practical joke by one of my neighbors, or the people from that lunatic asylum got out, or something. And you stare at it, and he pleads with you. He says, please, can I come in and wreck your furniture? And you shake your head and close the door and go back about your business. A couple hours later, another knock. This time it's a woman, and she has a bucket of paint in her hand. And she says, please, sir, may I slosh this paint all over your walls? And you, in your very best manner, say, no, madam, you may not slosh your paint all over my wall. The neighbor sure has an odd sense of humor to keep sending his friends over here to ask questions like that. 2 or 3 hours later, third knock on the door. Another man comes up. He has a big bucket of trash in his hand. Please, sir, may I scatter my trash all over your house? You say, no, you can't scatter trash all over. Close the door and go out about your business. That night, the man goes to bed, and he's lying there, and he's thinking about the very peculiar experiences that he's had. And while he's lying there, something happens to him. Now follow. Something happens to him that he doesn't know is happening to him. So we're going to leave him there for a minute, and I'm going to tell you, we're going to look down at him there, kind of dazed, almost falling off to sleep, but not quite. And we're going to look into his psychic system. 3 times while he's lying there, 3 different thoughts combined with matching emotions come to him. And he suffers from these 3, which I'll explain in a minute. He suffers from these 3 without knowing that he is doing so. Now, it's very important for you to know that he doesn't know at the moment of his pain and his shame. He doesn't know what is causing it. All he knows is the agony of the thought - feeling. Now, the first one, he's lying there, is his remembrance. Yeah, we'll get close to home now. Is his remembrance that when he was a 10-year-old boy, his parents had left some money on a mantle, kind of left it out there for a little bit, and he stole 50 cents from his parents. And he went out and bought candy with it. And they never found it out. They never missed it. But he knew, here he is now, a 50-year-old man. He's remembering 40 years ago when he stole that 50 cents off the mantle from his parents and never told him. And that memory, as he was lying there, came through his mind and tormented him. Right? That's one. Now remember, he's not able to say, oh, that thought of how I stole that 50 cents came through me. All he knows is it felt that way. You understand? Pained. Lying there still, a second thought comes through his mind. This time when he was at his first car, and he pulled into a parking lot somewhere and banged another person's car, banged up the fender, and he knew he should have left his name and address and phone number, that he'd banged up the other person's car, and it's his careless driving that did it. He was eager to get somewhere, to the dance or whatever. Instead of leaving the note, he ran off real fast. Right? It happened to any of you, and not that, but your own way. Right? So that caused him pain, but he wasn't able to stand outside of himself and say, I saw that thought come back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I banged that man's car and went off and felt guilty about it, but glad that I wasn't involved in it too. That's the second thought. Remember, he's not a conscious man. He's not able to observe his thoughts and feelings. Third thought comes through his mind. This one connected with sex. You know how emotional sex is? You know how it haunts your mind in so many different ways? Well, this sex thought was a shameful, embarrassing one. Something to do with sex that he had experienced in past years. That came through his mind and his feelings and humiliated him. In other words, this man, like everyone else, is just suffering from a stream of attacks by the past, which he takes as being now. All right. He lies there a couple hours longer, and he thinks about the 3 people who came to his door that he said no to, and he thinks about his suffering. All of a sudden, because he has been coming to this class, an explosion of consciousness, his first real spiritual revelation, it comes to him and he sits up and he knows, he sees clearly, he understands what's been happening to him. Practical joke or not, those 3 people who came, he now sees the exact parallel between that experience and what happened to him during the night and all day long, 24 hours a day. He can very easily say no to vandals who come to the door and say, can I wreck your house? That's easy, because it's a physical thing. It's an exterior thing. And he sees that because he didn't know how to say no, he didn't understand what it means to spiritually say no, because yes to wrong things always occurs in a state of psychic sleep. He just laid there and permitted them to come through his mind and to torment him. Now, why do you suppose there's such a gap between our ability to say no to someone who says, I want to wreck your house, and all these people who, these individual thoughts, think of them as individuals, individual vandals. Why do you think there's such a gap? I'll tell you why. Simply because you don't know what is going on inside your own psychic system. That's it. It cannot be explained any clearer. All right, we'll try to explain it clearer. You are ignorant of yourself. Because you're in a state of spiritual sleep, you do the very same thing, and you see if it happens to you during the rest of this day. And you remember exactly as you said no to any vandal who comes to your door, you can say no to the very same ones who come to you in the night, and it can be right in the middle of the day, can't it? We're talking about spiritual darkness. Come to you in the very night, and because you don't know they're there, they creep in and cause you pain. Now, do you know the cause of all your pain? See, we see the physical world through the 5 senses, eyes and ears and so on. We see it and we can comprehend the physical world on its own level because we have the eyes and ears to do that very thing. We can look out and we can see we have to turn left or right in the car or whatever we have to do. We can see that. Why aren't we as competent inwardly? The answer to that, again, is very simple, because our spiritual perception has not matured. Have you had any experiences at all, or in the middle of the night, in the middle of your sleep, all of a sudden something came to you and you said, see, And now you understand something we emphasize here, which is hearing the words about self-awakening is not the same as self-awakening. If I say you're asleep and you must wake up, you may think you understand that. You may think you're awake. And the only thing you really understand is the English language. Right? You understand the words, and you nod your head so solemnly and so wisely. It's one or the other. You are either under the domination of not just 3 thought feelings, but thousands of them. And let me tell you one trick they use that you foolish people fall for. When the people came to the door and wanted to wreck the furniture and slosh the paint and scatter the trash, the first time the man stood there and said no, they didn't go away. They tried again. He said no, they tried again. He said no, they tried again. He said no, they tried again. Mechanicalness by its very nature is persistent. A rolling truck going down the steep hill is very persistent, isn't it? You're not going to stop it by talking to it. It has to go. That's its nature. The only thing that can stop it is something that is not mechanical. So a mechanical, you can't stop the mechanical truck. But the point is, they will stand there and persist. Don't they? Isn't it difficult to put them out? Yeah. Look, you've been coming here for all this time. You read the books. You attend to the talks. Look how hard it is. They plead. And you are sentimental. So sentimental. You're so used to being taken by tears and by sad faces that you won't go through the new guilt of saying no. Because you say, if they plead with you, let me come in and wreck your house. So instead of saying no, you let them come in and wreck your house, wreck your life. You feel that if you say no to them, that you will be an immoral person, right? An unkind person. How can I tell you with words? How can I tell you that you come to that door 50 times a day and they plead, please may I come in and wreck your life, and you open the door and say yes. You know that's a fact. You know how you look at another person, and if they happen to be solemn, you go into self-wrecking reactions to it. I wonder if he hates me this morning. He wasn't even thinking about you. He was thinking about what he always thinks about, which is himself. Now look, a trick is being played on you. Don't feel sorry for anyone. When you feel sorry for anyone, you add to the wreckage of both your world and the world out there. Feeling sorry means that you feel sorry. Therefore, I am kindly. I feel sorry for those hungry children over in that country across the world, the other half of the world. And I give money to them. I feel sorry for them. I'm doing my bit to make this a better world. That person needs this class desperately. Feeling sorry for another person establishes just one more false I in you. Will you give it up? Will you yield the feeling to reality? I'll tell you how you yield to it. You yield to it simply by sticking with the pain of your shame, which is also a rhyme. Stick with the pain, not a true rhyme, pain of your shame. Stick with that until you can't take it anymore, and then take it anymore. You watch your tendency to start to argue with yourself and justify opening the door and welcoming the vandal in. Watch the argument. Should I or shouldn't I? I am telling you, you should not. No! I'll tell you what to do. After all three of those vandals come to your door, you say no, close the door, then run real quick to the nearest window. And you look out the window and you cup your ears like that, and you will hear him cursing you. Right. All right? Now, why don't you know that before? The word is sucker, I think. I'm going to give you an assignment for the rest of the weekend. When you stand up here, please give us a minute and a half or so of what you should say no to. When you get up, center your talks around that. Now look, I told you last night that if you start with an intellectual no, it will eventually properly influence in the right way the rest of you. An intellectual no is not enough. Because if you only have an intellectual no, if someone else who is dominating has an intellectual yes that is stronger than yours, you won't be able to keep the no going, and you'll get in trouble through yielding to the vandal's yes. You must start where you are. And if you stick with it, as I said, through all their pleading, through all their tears, and look what I did for you, son, daughter, now look what you owe me. Stick with all that. I guarantee you that eventually you'll be able to go to the window real quick and see the cursing. Now look how stupid it is. I can't think of a better word. Stupid. Stupid it is to invite someone into your life who wrecks the life, and once he's wrecked it, he'll go out and laugh at you, being a sucker, which you were. You see, you don't have any sense at all. Sense means to see. And to see means that you know absolutely whose side you are on. As you begin to grasp whose side you're on, the side of light, you don't even say no. It is there. It is there in your manner. It is the way you walk around this room. You understand that? So that you don't have to go into the intellect at all. It's part of it if you talk to someone, because then you're verbalizing and using ideas. Your very life is a no. Your life is a no to one thing. Your life is a no to the whole world the way it is. Doesn't God say no to this world? Is God a part of this world? True spirituality is not a part of this world. People will leave you alone after that. They won't even try anymore. See, you ask for what you're getting by living in the neighborhood that you live in, the spiritual neighborhood. The reason they knock on your door and try to tempt you is because you still live in the slums. When you live in the kingdom neighborhood, they don't even come to your door anymore. They want nothing to do with that neighborhood. They want the slums where they belong. So are you going to yield? So are you going to watch for the rest of this day? Just watch, especially for the rest of this day, the vandals who come to your door and plead with you to let them in to wreck your house. Your seed of this is your first no. You're maybe very feeble, but at least you're understanding who the enemy is. And the enemy is any form of darkness, whatever, that wants to come in and take over your life. Increasingly take over your life. And you can increasingly, by your spirit, by your essence, by your manner, by your facial expression, everything is one grand, complete, quiet, and final no. That's real spiritual life. Man is in a very strange and very painful contradiction, in which he wants desperately to remain as he is, and with equal desperation wants to change what he is. Caught right in the middle of two powerful desires. This is his life. This is her life. This is the pain and the confusion and the doubts and the uncertainty and the shaking of their lives. Now, wouldn't you think that a person caught in this condition, in this dreadful inner conflict, wouldn't you think that he would ask himself, is there an explanation? I see what's going on inside of me, how I can't get along with other people, not for very long anyway. And I see how I want certain things. I want success, and I want to be approved, I want to be accepted. And he sees all these pains inside himself. Wouldn't you think he would ask, is there an answer? Is there an explanation to it? No. As a matter of fact, very few people even come to the elementary inquiry as to whether there is an answer to their problem. Now, I'll tell you why it is. Because he or she has accepted a false answer which they take as real, and they settle with that and suffer from it. How easy it is to be lazy, to refuse to fight for yourself rightly, and just take up the quick answer that you have. Listen to the answer of the average man or woman. Listen to it. The answer is, tomorrow I have something exciting to do. That's the answer to all his problems. He never searches any deeper than that. He has something to look forward to, something to occupy him, something to escape to. Now, you wouldn't call that very intelligent, would you? To take an aspirin tablet instead of curing the cause of the headache. But this is what everyone does. We're doing something different here. We're saying the problem is there, and it's very deep, and it's very persistent. And everything that you have done to try to find an answer has only made it more confused than it was before. Now, go real slow. Sometimes we take these points and they go over the head so that you don't see the vastness of them. The simple question, could there be a higher answer than the one I've presently found? Because you know very well that that exciting activity that you've planned for tomorrow, or that self-pity, or that self-involvement, you know very well they're not the answers. Real intelligence coming to real intelligence will put you through a series of shocking incidents and experiences inside yourself in which you don't want to see your lack of reasonable procedure, of rightness, in which you begin to see, as hard as it is on the vanity, that you haven't lived an intelligent life at all. Are you seated there telling me and telling yourself and telling your family that anger, that being thwarted, that frustration is intelligent? Well, I'll tell you, there's no intelligence in them at all. By that standard, then, what is your level of wisdom or lack of it? To find the answers, then, you have to go where they are. To find the answers, you have to go and listen to something that is higher than you. Are you allowing that there's anything higher than you, or do you know everything? Do you know more than God himself? Now, don't give a quick, fast answer or you'll deceive yourself. Because I'm telling you that there is a higher answer to all your problems. And if you haven't found it, it is because you think that you already have them. Therefore, you think you are more intelligent than anyone or anything in the universe, which is not very intelligent. And I'll tell you again that it's not at all a sign of a wise mind to endure over the months and over the years suffering. It's very, as a matter of fact, it's very foolish to be in pain, to be in agony, to be in confusion. That's not intelligence at all. Wouldn't you say that intelligence and a clear mind are the same thing? Wouldn't you say that? Wouldn't you therefore also say that stupidity and a confused, baffled mind are the same thing? Of course they are. Here's my question to you then, up to this point. Are you willing to walk away from yourself in order to find a source of wisdom that is higher than you? Now, there is the question, what is your answer to that? What do you even do with a question like that? I know there's a lot of bewilderments in the question itself. I said, are you willing to depart from your present nature, your contradictory nature? Willing to walk away from that, not seeking anything, but simply walking away from the old nature. Because if you're seeking something, you're seeking it with the old nature, and you'll find the old nature and a new disguise, and you'll get a new religion or a new human relationship or a new activity, and you haven't changed at all. You have the new excitement, you have the tomorrow that you're looking for, and you haven't changed yourself. And the next day, the dreary battle starts all over again. Do you study people's faces when you're out in a cafe? Look at your relatives sometime. Just look at them quietly when they're talking about themselves, of course, most of the time. Just look at their faces and you'll see the exact kind of a person I'm talking about. And when they look at you, do they see that same kind of a person? The person who is defeated? You know, come on. You know very well that you're defeated. Don't you pull your labels out and say, I'm not defeated because I'm this or that. What's the label got to do with it? It has nothing at all. What are you really like internally right now while you're listening to me? What's going through you right now? Something that's nice or something that's not very nice? You have to live with who you are 24 hours a day. How do you like it? How do you like living with you? If you don't like it, congratulations. If you don't like confronting yourself and your own angers and your own irritations and your own pretenses, if you don't like living with that anymore, it can be changed. Look, just start asking the question, even if you say it mechanically at first. Just start asking the question, could it be that there is something that is higher than I am. Something that has the real answers, because all I have are the wrong ones, and I know it, because my pain is telling me that. And my desperation is repeating that to me day after day. Here's a small child in his bedroom at night, and his bed is near the window. And on a windy night, when the moon is out and fairly full, he sees the tall trees and bushes outside of his bedroom window. He sees the shadows that the wind and the moon and the trees put out there. And in his mind, which doesn't understand, he sees them as hovering monsters. He sees them as something that is threatening him personally. He is the center of the threat. And so he cries out, and his parents come in, and they explain things a little bit to him. But he's so gone and emotional about it, he can't hear the explanation. So the next night, the same thing happens. And he's absolutely sure that they are monsters. And you are equally sure that your monsters are real. They are real as something that express themselves in your life, but they're not real in reality. They have no actual threat behind them at all, but you don't know that yet. That's why you're afraid of people. That's why you're afraid of yourself. You're afraid of the danger that you are to yourself. Are you not? Have you ever studied that, by the way? Have you ever looked at yourself and said, you know, maybe I'm just as much a threat to me as that other person? Study that sometime. Anyway, the child goes on, frightened and tearful. Finally, one day, his parents decide to do something different. So they go in one night and they bring in his little robe. They put it on him and they take his hand and they explain what they're going to do. They're going to take him outside and show him what is happening actually. So they lead him out, and he's dragging behind them, of course, as his father takes his hand, because he doesn't want to go out there where all those monsters are. But he's with his parents and he feels fairly safe, so he goes out with him. And as best as they can get his attention, they explain it to him. There's a powerful thought right there. As best as they can get his attention, because he's scared and he's shaking and he's tearful and he huddles up close to his mother. And it isn't easy to talk to him. Is it easy to talk to you about these things? Or are you so emotional, so tied to the past, so connected with fantasy that something higher than you, more wiser than you, can explain it to you? Think about that too. Anyway, the parents take him out and they point to the moon. And they say, now the moon makes the light come in through your bedroom window. And you see how the trees are in front of the window too, and the moon shining down produces a shadow. Those big hovering shadows that you thought were monsters. See, they're not monsters, they are trees. And also, when the wind blows, it gives the appearance of a monster moving toward you, but it's merely moving sideways as the wind blows it. That child, if you have ever had children, you know that that child isn't going to even understand it then. He's too tied up in himself and in his own emotions. But a right start has been made. And he will begin to, over a period of time, begin to see the reality of it, the scientific explanation of it. And he does that as he sees that trees, moving trees are not monsters. His fear fades. Listen to what I'm going to tell you, please. Truth, the facts, cosmic science explains everything. There's no difficulty that you can think of that can't be explained by the facts. So you think of where you're faltering, where you are afraid of all those hovering monsters in life. And just notice that you do cry out. You do wonder how you ever got into a position where they can threaten you so badly. And I will tell you that if you follow these truths all the way, I will tell you that exactly as that child understood it and his fears faded out, that very precise problem that you brought into this room here today, that very precise problem will vanish. I will guarantee you that. Because in the light, all these hovering monsters of darkness, of doubt, of tension, of wanting to strike back, of wondering how you ever got into this position, all those monsters will vanish. But I'll tell you what you're doing. You're sobbing. No, don't you cry? Internally, sometimes externally. You're sobbing. You're holding back. And when reality tries to get through to you with a scientific explanation that what is scaring you has no scare power in it at all, when reality tries to tell you that, you can't hear. Because your mind and your emotions and your energies, all your energies, are doing something else, are doing something wrong. You can use your mind. You can use all the parts of your mind, your memory, your imagination, repetition. You can use all parts of your mind, your whole psychic system. You could use all of them to begin to understand the offered explanation. You're getting the explanation right now. What hovering monsters of the past are preventing you from hearing it right now. You have to go to work. You have to say no more of this nonsense of enjoying being scared. See, you enjoy it. That is, it gives you a certain false feeling of life. It gives you a certain false excitement to be scared, because then your attention can be centered on you. But not really. Your attention can be centered on what you have identified as you, which is not you at all. In your imagination, you have built up a certain entity that you call by your name, that you call me, that you call yourself, which is not yourself at all. But that is what trembles when you see the shadows outside the window. That is what trembles, not you. You are never anything that can shake and strike back and be bewildered. You are never anything that's wrong, not your real nature. Then the imposter inside of you is directing your activities, is it not, and making them what they are. I repeat now, you're going to have to go to work. There are things that you have to do. Now, let me say it maybe the fifth time. There are things that you have to do because you have been given the instructions on how to have a real life instead of a shallow, false life that you merely call real. If you have anger or hatred in you, you do not have a real life. If fighting and feuding with yourself or anyone else is part of your life, you do not have a real life. Would you call hostility a right thing or a wrong thing? Now, come on. Would you call hatred right or wrong? Would you call running away from truth right or wrong? You know the answers to those. Another example. Here's a long, deep canyon. And a number of people are lined up all along the edge of the canyon, looking longingly over to the other side where they see it's a beautiful land. And they want to get over there, but they don't know how. So they stand there and wonder how they might make it, whether they can make it. Man comes along and he speaks to each one individually. Truth is an individual experience. And he speaks to each man and each woman there individually. And he says, the bridge builder, that's what we'll call him. The bridge builder says to the man, I know that you want to get over there, but I also know you don't know how to do it. I will tell you how to do it. Would you like to hear? The man says, oh, I'd give anything if you'll tell me how I can build my own bridge to get over there. The man says, fine. I'll tell you how to do it. And then he gives them instructions. For example, he tells them how to build a catapult. This is the scientific explanation. And on that catapult, you put a piece of long, long string. You catapult the end over there and hook it over in some way on the other side. Then you get a rope across in the same way. Pretty soon you have contact with the other side. Then you go back in the woods and you begin building the bridge from your side, a little bit at a time, strengthening the hold over onto the other side as you go. So he gives them, listen to this. He gives them every detail they need to have to build a bridge of their own. Goes to farther down alongside the rim of the canyon. And there's a woman there. She says the same thing. Can you show me how to build a bridge? He gives her precise instructions. The next man, the next woman, on and on and on. He has done his part. Truth has done its part in giving you the instructions on how to be a different kind of a human being. Man goes away for a few days, comes back, and no work has been done. One of the men, he's sitting there amusing himself with his own thoughts instead of doing practical work of getting that timber out of the woods to start building the bridge. The woman is sitting there crying because there's no one to help her. Another man is wandering around bothering the other people, just bothering them. Not that they want to build the bridge too, but everyone is doing everything but what they should be doing, which is to build the bridge. And they come up to him. And you know what they do? They ask him the very same question they asked him several days before. Could you show me how to build a bridge? He says, I told you how to build a bridge. And they say, could you tell me how to build a bridge? He says, I told you exactly how to build the bridge. What have you been doing the last week while I was gone? And he nods his head patiently because you see, truth has been dealing with human beings for thousands and thousands of years. And it knows exactly how every person is going to behave when given the truth for the first time, which is to simply remain lazy and try to evade the work and try to pretend that there's a better method. And some of those people along the rim of the canyon were actually hostile toward him. When they found out that the bridge didn't practically build itself overnight, they became hostile, and they said, I'm going to go find a man who really knows how to help me. And they left, went way on down, farther, miles on down, downhill along the rim, trying to find someone else. So he knows the answer. He knows the answer to their question, that they are not going to be sincere about it. Whatever they ask, they're going to simply wander around the canyon, repeating over and over. He has one thing to say to them. Truth has one thing to say to any of us. Build the bridge. You say you want to get across to the other side. Let's see if you really do. Let's see what you do individually, because it is an individual task, what you do individually to follow instructions. Now, you've had the instructions in this class. You've been told over and over many, many times exactly what to do. Now you have to do one thing. It's called work. Now what would be more fun? What would be more pleasurable than doing something that's very practical, that will get you over to the other side so that you don't have to endure the dreariness and the darkness of the present side? Most human beings are not going to build their own bridge. If they find that it's not ready-made, they're going to go back and cry or complain or something like that. So I ask you right now, all of you hearing this now, what do you want most of all in life? Now I ask you, you have to answer that. Take that question home with you. What do you want most of all in life? Is there something in you that says, enough fooling around, enough pretending? What can I do to find something that is not the same as the old? You've been told. All these spiritual principles that we talk about, they have been given to you. The wood is out there in the woods. You have to collect it and put it together with the rope. You have to put all the pieces together, all the instructions together. And I will tell you, right in front of you, and with great delight, you will see the bridge beginning to be built across to the other side. And you'll take a few timid steps out, but you will know that you have left that old land. You'll know that you've left it. It feels different. And after long and hard work to the other side, you'll reach the other side. That means you have a new nature. You have a new self. That self does not come from anything from the past. That self comes from something that is very high, that has come down to change you and make you different. The known self cannot find reality. The personal self with which you are so familiar can never rise above its own level. All it can do is repeat itself on its own level, repeating the same ideas, religious ideas, worldly ideas. All it can do is repeat on the horizontal level. It can never rise up in the air. And it is extremely important for you to understand these opening comments. Because if you understand what they are all about, you will also have insight into why you have not changed your nature. You will understand why you are still a captive of your own irritations, of your own bewilderments about life. You will understand the causes where you went wrong, and understanding those causes thoroughly, you will then see that they are faults, and the seeing of the faults will put them in back of you so that there is room for something different. Trying to change your known nature, made up of ideas and experiences, convictions, whether they're religious or social, ideas you have about yourself, trying to change your ideas only results in you acquiring a new kind or a new set of ideas on the same level. Therefore, your basic nature remains unchanged. You're still a captive of yourself. It's like having an automobile and trying to make that automobile fly. An automobile is made to go horizontally along the ground, and that's fine for that purpose. You have an intellect, and the purpose of that intellect, one purpose, is to enable you to function properly in this life, to carry out in your business world, in your family life, or whatever. However, can you understand, please try to understand, that the mind you use to conduct your trade or to raise the children or to get an education, can you understand that that mind, that intellect, that collection of ideas is severely limited? It can only give you an education. It can only tell you how to conduct your business. It cannot go beyond that. if you understand that you are presently on the horizontal level, moving horizontally, never upward, if you understand the limitations of the way you are now thinking and living and feeling and reacting, you won't make the dreadful mistake that most human beings make, which is this. Taking religious words, a so-called religious person will say, I talk about God, I talk about a future life somewhere. I talk about these things and I think about them and I quote religious books. Therefore, I am different, you are not. The mind is still operating on the level of its own familiarity with words. And once a human being gets stuck on the level of repetition, it is enormously difficult to ever just sit down and talk to him and tell him, sir or madam, you have all these philosophies and you've read all these books and you attend religious services, but you're still the same frightened human being. Can you see that? If a person has become very hardened in this known self, this familiar self, if he's become very hardened in that, it is enormously difficult to get higher truths over to him. And now we're talking about us here in this room tonight. We're not talking about other people. We're talking about ourselves. We're talking about the need to see something that is higher than what we've lived before. We're trying to see that there is a way that is, listen please, talking about a way that is not right. It has not solved our problems. It has not changed anything. Somewhere we picked up all these philosophic ideas and thoughts, and we thought that they were going to change us, comfort us, protect us, and nothing of the sort happened, and nothing of the sort can ever happen. There can be no change in the intellect except from one idea to another. Now, I'll tell you what it's like. Imagine a schoolroom filled with young children. And during the night, before they came to school that morning, a vandal had snuck into the school. And here there's this large blackboard up in front of them. And this vandal had written all sorts of wrong things on the blackboard, wrong conclusions. For example, he said that the capital of France was Tokyo and gave wrong mathematical information, 8 and 8 make 20. A lot of misspelled words up there. And here's these little children. Now look. The children are looking at all these wrong conclusions, but they don't know they're wrong. They're taking them as right because they were put up there, and they thought the teacher had put them up. The teacher didn't put them up. Somewhere in the night, someone who didn't know the answers put them up there. And so these children maybe go home the next day. The teacher doesn't show up or something. They go home, and they take these ideas as being true. Now, that's the end of the illustration, but the beginning of an enormous task for us. Do you understand? The only reason we go wrong is because we're operating from wrong thoughts, wrong feelings. If we were right internally, things would go right. If things don't go right, there's something wrong with us. And it's about time we became humble enough to look inside ourselves and say, you know, that's true. Things are going wrong. I don't like to admit it, but I can see the collection of ideas that I operate from have only got me into trouble, and they make me tense. And the last thing they do is give me that quality called contentment. So look, here we are. We have a known self, very familiar. You know your habits, you know how you think, you know how you go through your day. Well known to you. And you also know from personal experience that you haven't changed inwardly. all those quotations of philosophical books, hasn't changed a thing. Look where this leaves us. Oh, what a leap we're going to have to take now. No reforming the known self. No reforming it. It can't be reformed. Haven't you tried to reform yourself? Haven't you said, I'm not going to get angry anymore. I'm going to treat my spouse better. And you treated your spouse the same way the next day. Haven't you seen the impossibility of changing your actual nature? So if we can't reform, what does that leave us with? Listen to this word, and if you are really sincere about changing things, about being a different kind of a human being here on earth, forget the word reform and think of the word replacement. Replacement. Now, a thing that's replaced is something that's entirely new. If you have an automobile and it won't fly, then you have to replace what you have as that mechanical automobile. And you have to replace it with an airplane, and now you can fly. We're talking about the spiritual airplane which exists. Down to practical application. Haven't you ever felt that you've missed out in life? Yes, you have. Haven't you felt that somehow you've been cheated, passed by? The other people have had favors and fortunes that you have never had. Now, listen to what I'm going to tell you. First of all, the feeling that you've been left out is false. It was false at the beginning, from the very start of that wrong attitude that life has passed you by. Now, don't you deny that that's in you. I know it is. Connects very much with envy, doesn't it? Jealousy of other people. So you feel that you haven't been favored like someone else has. They're more wealthy or more successful or more popular or better looking or whatever. So you have all these ideas. Do you know where that comes from? It comes from this known self. You have always known that idea. You have always had it. So where does it leave us? With replacement. Now we have something we're going to have to look at very, very carefully. How can the known self, what you already know about, your habits, your experiences, your tears, and your temporary excitements, how is that, the mechanical automobile traveling horizontally, how is that going to replace anything? It isn't. It has nothing to give. But you still think so, and you try to make it give you something higher than itself, which is why you're always depressed. I know what's happening to your minds. I know that when your escapes have been cut off, you start to get a little nervous. You start to say, well, then if I can't change myself, what is the answer? What you said, the speaker said that something higher than my mechanical mind and my known self exists. Where am I going to find it? You will never find it. That's the secret. That's the marvelous explanation. You can never find it. Because the mind, the intellect, cannot enter the kingdom. The airplane can't fly. It can only repeat itself. Now, where does that leave you? It leaves you with understanding 100% what you have to do next, which is to do nothing at all but understand. The slightest action that you take to try to change yourself, to get rid of your temper, to get rid of your depression and your fear, the very first slight movement you make to get rid of it will keep it. Because you're activating your mind, you're activating all these habits, all these escapes that you have that say, if I do something, I will feel different. You don't feel different at all. You have the temporary thrill maybe of meeting a new person or of succeeding a bit out in the world. And nothing has changed. You see, here's the difficulty in talking about a transformed nature. You can't conceive it. How can the old understand the new? How can the automobile understand the airplane? There's no understanding in it at all. But what you can do is say to yourself, everything I've done to make myself happy has failed. All I have done is struggled with it, getting more frustrated all the time, getting more angry all the time, feeling trapped by life, wondering what it's all about. You can know what it's all about. There is a knowledge, there is an understanding that can come to you that will tell you what it's all about. But you can't originate it. You can't create it. And we'd like to do that so that we can call ourselves creators. That has to go. That's simply vanity, isn't it? You understand the phrase then that you can't save yourself. You cannot save yourself because you are the problem itself. How can the problem solve itself? Everything we've talked about up to now is very bright, very encouraging. Why? Because we're getting the facts of the situation. And I hope while I'm talking here that you are also watching what is going on inside of you when you hear these things. Do you find yourself resisting? Do you find yourself arguing? That is the known self in action. And if you're going to become a spiritual detective, which you must do, you must, even while you're listening and watching here now, even as you're listening and watching, you must also watch to see what's going on inside of you so that your old nature doesn't again put something over on you and close your eyes to the beauty and the power of the truth. Most people are like a man trapped inside of a huge dark valley. And he wants to get out, but he looks up and he sees a ring of a mountain around him. And he can't climb over the mountain. So he doesn't know how to get out until he wanders around at the base of the mountain and he sees a cave opening. And he looks in and he sort of senses, he understands that this cave, which is a tunnel really, starts at the inside of the valley and leads right directly through the base of the mountain and leads to the outside where there's freedom. He senses that. But he also, as he looks into the mouth of the cave, he becomes frightened. See, the dark valley of the canyon is known to him. That's the known self, his familiar habits. And he feels, if you can understand this, he feels comfortably miserable there. That is, he's there and he knows what's going to happen next, even if it's heartache, even if it's disappointment. He knows what's going to happen next. When you start the spiritual journey, when you enter that dark cave for yourself, you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't know what terrors, as you call them, are around the next bend in the cave. But shall I tell you what you have to do? You have to go. You have to leave the known life that you have. As exciting as it is, as fulfilling as it seems to be, and enter that dark cave and face the terrors. And I'll tell you, you have to be brave. You have to enter the dark cave and say to yourself, Anything I have to go through is better than continuing to live the kind of a life I'm living now, because it is no life at all. You know how we hide things from everyone else, and we pretend, and we put on smiles, and we try to convince ourselves that everything is okay and that we have the answers? That has to go. And one way it can go is for you to enter that dark cave, as the man did. And when he got in there, he saw all sorts of things he didn't want to see. If you're going to investigate yourself, which you must do, you're going to see all sorts of things you don't want to see. You thought you were intelligent, and you see that you weren't. You thought that you were so sure of yourself, and you see that you tremble and fake it out in the outer world so people won't see. You'll see things that will upset you, but let me tell you, the first step inside that cave is the first step toward a true life, toward sanity, toward you being free. How's this? Listen to this. To you being free of whatever is now bothering you. What is it? You name it, and I will tell you that is the first stage toward you erasing all that pain that you have and all that uncertainty and feeling left out and feeling cheated. So the man goes inside the cave, and all he sees are dark, deep pools that he has to carefully walk around lest he fall in. And he hears strange sounds of strange creatures flying overhead. And he comes to dead ends in the cavern, and he has to retrace his steps, and he has to come back and start. He has to come back and start all over again dozens of times. But look, let me tell you an attitude to take inside that cave. That is investigating yourself. That's what it means to investigate yourself. What do you care how many times you have to start all over? What do you care every time you see you have to start all over? You have learned something. You've learned that you were in the wrong passage inside that cave. Now, isn't that nice to know that? Most people never learn it. While going down the wrong passage, they're screaming to themselves, I'm doing right, I know what is right. Have you known people do that? You've known them. And you know how they're tearing themselves apart. We're going to be more intelligent than that. We're going to come back 1,000 times if necessary, down back to the main passageway and start down again. If you do, and you keep going, a marvelous thing will happen to you one time. Let me tell you how it happened to the man, and you'll see the parallel. After a long, long time wandering around the cave, lonely and scared and not knowing which way to turn, at a certain point, there was just enough light in a certain section where he could look down, and what he saw was a used-up candle. And he looked down and he picked it up, and a dozen thoughts raced to his mind at once. And he finally said to himself, this is interesting, this is encouraging, this is marvelous. Someone has come this way before. Someone else has succeeded. Someone else came in this cave all alone, just as I'm doing, because there's evidence of the candle, and he simply put that candle down and picked up another one and went on his way. And he went on his way, went along. He saw another candle and saw another and saw another. You're going to see signs of your spiritual journey, just as that man did. You're going to see yourself changing inwardly. You're going to see that your very nature no longer, for example, when you get out the other side of that mountain as that man did, you'll see yourself less and less and less concerned with your own life. And the reason you're less concerned with your own life, because you understand, and listen to me, you understand that it is not your life anymore, therefore you don't have to be concerned. You were free. Look how concerned you are now. How desperately you explain to other people. Look how you run around wondering if you're doing the right thing or whether you're going to offend someone. wondering how you got trapped in this or that situation and how you're going to get out of it. Self-concern. When you exit on the other side of that mountain, I will tell you why you will have no self-concern. Because you won't have a self anymore. You won't have that usual self, that known self that we talked about earlier, that is always nagging you, that is always telling you how horrible you are, how many mistakes you've made, and always telling you that it's always going to be this way. And you listened to it and you went into despair because you were listening to your old nature. When you got into the bright sunlight, when you exit from that cave, you will understand how it happened, but you'll know that it did. You'll be walking out there and you'll say, how come I'm not so worried about my finances, for example? How come I'm not so concerned about losing that person anymore? How come everything is different? You won't have to search for an answer. You will be the answer because the answer is your new nature. And now you know. Now you understand the difference between the way you were years before and the way you are now. And you're not thinking about it. You were understanding it. You were comprehending it. And you know that a spiritual miracle has happened in your life. And you understand really and truly how rare it is for any human being, man or woman, to actually come out of the old life and enter into this new one that we're talking about. How rare it is, because you understand how long you resisted, how you fought, how you thought that truth was the enemy, how you thought that you were being destroyed as you went through that cave. And instead, little by little, the signs came. The signs came that you were doing the right thing after all. And you grew more sprightly in your step, more sure of yourself, till you finally exited out on the other side. Now look, at this point, you'll have no enthusiasm for giving credit to yourself for being spiritual. You'll understand that true spirituality, authentic spirituality, is something that is not created by you and cannot be, because it's not of the old nature. It is something that comes to you when we give up. When we give up what? Well, when we give up the old nature, when we give up our vanity, when we give up trying to save ourselves. And what you find out eventually, that there is no self there to save at all. There is only the illusion. There is only all these thoughts that crowded through our minds, jumbling through our minds, all these thoughts that said you'd better save yourself by becoming a success in this life. And you maybe became a success, or you didn't become a success, but your ego then revolved around failure. But in either case, you said, I haven't made, and then you didn't have it made the next morning. Let me tell you, that light on the other side of that mountain is forever. There's no ups and downs in it. There's no anxiety in it. The anxiety, you finally understand that anxiety belongs to the old nature, not to the new. And now you have the new, and now you enter a state that is called rest. One way in which you can become spiritually observant and awake is to become visually observant and awake. Now, you may think you already do that. You don't. I was watching Joan's eyes wander all over the room. We had it agreed that after the break she was going to raise her hand and read a letter. She was not visually and mentally alert and awake according to the plan. Now, if you can't see spiritually, all right. you can begin to see physically, visually. And that will sharpen, by the way, as you become spiritually awake, you'll become aware of things off to the side. But try for now, please, to try to be aware of yourself physically. You know how often we have to say, don't stand in the aisles? Do you know that if we didn't have that rule, if we hadn't started it years ago, what confusion would reign in this room and everywhere else? You know, you'd all stand. You think that you're accomplishing something when you're merely following an order. 7 years ago, when we started these classes, one of the first things you're told, don't stand in aisles. Now, you obediently follow that little order. That's fine. So the aisles are more or less clear. What if it had never been given? You would all stand there and you'd all climb around each other. Be aware of yourself physically. Try to see, for example, you gentlemen doing the machine, why did you block Pat's arm? And Pat didn't have sense enough to see that it was blocked. So we went way over. I didn't know when to stop, Pat. I just stopped because I knew it was far too long. I didn't get a signal from you that I could see. Now, I'm going to tell you something that might be shocking to you. There are other people in this world besides you. And these people, they have their desires, and they have their problems, they have their pains, and they have their state of sleep just like you do. Now, if you want to have this less self-concern that we talked about earlier, you can begin to know that someone exists in this world besides you. Put yourself in the other person's place. You've heard that, and you don't do it. Look, try to stay awake with your eyes. When you go out of here and it's crowded, and we do bump into each other just because it's natural to do that, try to be aware of the other person coming toward you. Don't be in a daydream wondering about something you're going to do when you get home. Wherever you are, know what you're doing at the moment you're doing it. You've been given exercises. When the break is called, you're aware of yourself getting up out of your chair and walking into the other room. Do you only do that when you're given instructions? Can't you did it ever occur to you that you can give yourself instructions all day long? Or are you just going to wait till someone tells you what to do, then you obediently follow the rules simply because it was given to you? There is such a thing as spiritual initiative. And by that you can grow. If you don't take spiritual initiative, you won't grow. Now there it is.